In this video, I'm going to show you how to cast on to your Dina Beanstalk machine when you do not have a setup bonnet. A setup bonnet is very handy because it makes casting on fast and easy, and I recommend this be the very first project that you knit. It helps teach you several great skills and is a useful tool going forward. There are detailed instructions at dinabean.com for how to make a setup bonnet. But in the meantime, you'll need some way to cast on, and this is my recommended method. You'll notice my cylinder has the main mark at 1 o'clock and then the halfway mark across from it. We're going to be working back and forth between those two. And then I have two different kinds of waste yarn. You always start a circular sock knitting machine project with waste yarn, but in this case I have two. I have one that's about 6 yards that I cut, and then I have one that is coming up from my yarn feeder, from my yarn mast into the yarn feeder from the cone, and I've dropped it in right over the main mark. My first thing I'm going to do then is take both of the tail ends and I'm going to clip them together and then gently let them fall into the cylinder. What we're going to do now is to start by taking the yarn that's cut, the reddish orange yarn in my case, and at the top of the cylinder near the main mark, you're going to wrap from right to left around that needle. And then down at this side, you're going to wrap from left to right around the needle that is next to the halfway mark. And then you're going to go back up, and we're just going to wrap the few needles that are right here at the center of the machine, the ones that are raised between the two V-cams. We only have to wrap every other needle. So at the top, we wrap from the right and down the left. At the bottom, we do from the left, back up the right. Skipping a needle, go from the right, around the left. At the bottom, around from the left, up the right. We have one more we can do, around the right, up the right, around the left, and at the bottom, around the left and up the right. So the next thing we need to do is to make sure that these stitches that we're about to knit, that the orange yarn is now underneath the latches for all of the needles. Okay? And then we need to make sure that the waste yarn that's blue in this case, when it's coming from the cone, that needs to be above the first latch. So the yarn that you've cut off is underneath the latch, and the yarn coming from the cone through the yarn feeder is above the latch. For each of these stitches, the orange yarn in my case needs to be below the latch. At the bottom here, the yarn needs to sit above the latches. So we're just going to crank a few. We don't want the next stitch we need to wrap to close. That's really when you stop, is before that one is about to close. So now we wrap a few more. And you come at the top, you come around the right, down the left. At the bottom, you go around the left and up the right. Every other needle. Go until you've done the needles that are up. And again, we're going to pull all the needles up and push the stitches down, making sure that the yarn you've been wrapping back and forth has fallen below those stitches, below the latches, I'm sorry. And now we're going to crank again. I'm kind of pressing a little bit here in the center just to make sure the stitches don't jump up. Okay. These have knit correctly, just pushing them back down, continuing on. From the right down the left back up the right. I'm also making sure that up here the needles that are not being wrapped, the latches are open. Otherwise they won't catch the yarn. Last one. Push the stitches below the latches. Make sure all of the latches are open. Ready to turn a few more stitches. Whoops, I realized I missed a stitch there. I'll have to come back and fix that. This is not the easiest process. The easiest process is having a setup bonnet. So it's another good reason to make sure that is your first project. Okay, once you get back around, wrap again around the needle where you started. And then you can tuck the end down in and add a little weight. For now, I'm just going to add the little tiny weight. Okay. I'm going to make sure those stitches are below the latches again. Don't think that one was. Back it up a little. Keeping a really sharp eye on all of those latches. Making sure the stitches are falling below them. You really only have to do that for this first round. Actually, I'm going to switch that out for my medium weight. I still have stitches that are just going over their first time, so I'm still making sure that they are below the latches. I had two issues here. This one is the one where I missed one, so I have this going outside of 2 stitches. I'm going to pull it behind one of them. And then here, I have one stitch that didn't knit. So I'm going to take the wrapped stitch from the bottom, use my tool in there and lift it up and over the back of, in this case, the blue stitch. Now we can see most of our stitches are catching like they're supposed to. And you can crank several more rows until you're sure you have a very nice, 10 to 20 rows of waste yarn. That's really all there is to it. Visit us at deanandbean.com and please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.